From the world's most respected MMO news site, Massively Overpowered, comes a program that pits one MMO against another in a battle of wits. To the death. Welcome to Massively Opinionated. Media personalities from all over the internet come to this forum to face off in the ultimate debate. Everyone is entitled to their wrong opinion, but ours is the only one that matters. Having heard that someone was wrong on the internet, it's your host, Larry Everett!
Hey everybody, this is Larry Everett, and this is the camera I'm supposed to look at. Hey everybody, this is Larry Everett, and you are watching Massively Opinionated on Massively Overpowered. And this is going to be the final episode of Massively Opinionated, and we have changed some things up and how we're going to do this. I'll get to that in just a minute, but I do want to introduce first from MMOBomb.com. It is Mike Byrne. How are you doing, sir?
I'm well, sir. Merry Christmas and almost a Happy New Year to you. Camera 1, Camera 2, Camera 1, Camera 2. The Force Awakens was amazing. It's amazing.
It was. Absolutely, yeah. We were talking about it before the show started, and it's game-changing. We have now got Star Wars movies that we want to watch. It's really what that boils down to.
Kudos to J.J. Abrams.
Exactly.
Nicely done. Now take us somewhere new. From here.
Right. Well, I do want to talk about the rules for this particular show, because like I said, we're going to do this a little bit differently. Notice it's only me and Mike today, and so that means the debates on Massively Opinionated today are going to be just between him and I, and we don't have a judge, so that's going to be you. You are going to be the judge. You are going to decide who wins this debate, and we have questions this time around. They're all questions from the watchers of this show, readers of Massively OP. So let's.
Means one of us is guaranteed to win, Larry. Yes.
That's right. That's right. So, in no bias here, I guess, either, right?
Right. I don't have to make all of my answers Star Wars.
All right. Well, maybe you do. You never know. Maybe just turning them all into Star Wars will somehow fix it. Anyway, so
fix it. My answers are going to be shit if I don't. Maybe you could fix your answers by making them Star Wars.
Exactly. Fix them.
Let's do it.
Let's do this. Okay, so our first question is from Viking. Actually, these are all from Viking and Dwayne. So this first one is from Viking. And now I rephrased this a little bit because the question is a little bit loaded. Sorry, Viking. He asks, why do game studios treat their customers so badly? I mean, not only are they making shallow games with too simple gameplay, low graphics, but the games are full of bugs, and then comes DLC, which often costs a lot, and gamers are a little demanding in what game studios just can do what they like without consequences, or do they understand their customers? What do you think is going on here? So what I'd like to do is kind of frame this question into a question that's a little bit more debatable here. Is, are the games like that produce DLC and do things like along that line the better way to go, or are we looking at more meaty things like with full expansions and things along that line? So to give a couple of examples of this, ones that are I would consider less meaty would be like the Star Wars, the Old Republics, or the ESOs of the MMO genre, which is not to say that they're bad games, but is this what people are looking for? Are they looking for the DLC kind of stuff where it's like small nuggets more often? Or are they looking for the Final Fantasy 14s, which do big full expansions, or even the World of Warcrafts, which also do full expansions all at one time? So, Mike, I'm going
to answer Viking's question, since we've kind of reframed this in an extreme way here. Viking, the answer is because they got away with it. It's that simple. It happened accidentally years ago with a couple very, very bad releases that got fixed through patches, and they realized they could still make money that way and get a product out sooner while still making the money. So we let them get away with it by continuing to buy the stuff. That's the answer to your question. Now let's go with the reframed question.
Yeah. So Mike, what's your side of this debate? Are we looking at DLC, or are we looking at more fully formed releases? What are we?
I tend to go with more fully formed releases, and I think you saw that answer coming with me being a Final Fantasy XIV diehard player and a sub since A Realm Reborn launched and even God version 1. And that's kind of like a very, very good example or a dichotomy between this. Ooh, dichotomy! Using dime words this morning. All right. Version 1 and version 2 is an interesting little examination into this here. I prefer the games that do the meaty patches, the meaty expansions, and a lot of content at once. World of Warcraft used to fit that bill. To me, their schedule is now making that not very fun the way they do things. But things like Final Fantasy XIV, where I know I'm going to get a patch pretty much like clockwork every 3 months. Sometimes it's 2.5, sometimes it's 4, but I know it's going to come around the 3.5 month mark. I'm going to get a patch. It's going to have 2 or 3 dungeons in it. It may have a primal in it. It may have. It's going to have all kinds of new story stuff. It's going to have an addition to the relic or anima or zodiac weapon, whatever time frame you're looking at, quest line. It's going to have a set list of things that I can expect out of the next patch without even having seen a preview to the next patch. Then the expansions just blow that out of the water, and provided we've only had one so far in Heaven's Word, but that was 10 levels of content, all new story, new classes, new jobs, new dungeons, new content there, new primals, new story, and took days and days and days for me to go through enjoyably. Conversely, Star Wars The Old Republic, while I enjoy their expansions, particularly Knights of the Fallen Empire, I got through it in 2 days, and that was with me taking my time watching all the cutscenes. I tend to lean more towards the drop big content on me all at once and let me know the production schedule, and I'll debate on whether I'm happy paying $15 a month in the interim, if it's a sub-based game, than these little DLC patches that you see with Star Wars The Old Republic. DCUO is a big one that does that all the time, these little DLC patches. That just doesn't do it for me, particularly in the world of MMOs.
I definitely hear you. I can't say, I honestly...
Well, good, because I'm pretty sure this is on, right? All right.
But I can't say that I agree with you, and the reason being, it's a couple of things that I think is evidence towards the smaller piecemeal kind of things working, and I think the biggest one is to look at the games that are releasing on console and their success on console. And you mentioned one of them, and I actually mentioned the other one. You mentioned DC Universe Online, which, by the way, is actually doing pretty well on console, especially for how old it is. It's been around since 2011. So yeah, and it's doing really well on console, and also Elder Scrolls Online is also doing well on console, and it's one of those games that does these DLC kind of patches and that kind of thing. I think that's probably our biggest evidence of it working. But from my perspective, being a player of a game that does this kind of thing now, because I play both ESO and Star Wars The Old Republic, is that I think it's more what I like to see. What I like to see whenever whenever I'm paying a subscription of some sort or some kind of regular, ongoing cost, I like to see what I'm getting that month. Like for instance, with Star Wars: The Old Republic, although these last couple months has not quite worked out for me the way that I really wanted, but when they start again with the monthly releases, when they're releasing monthly, I know that my $15 or whatever went towards that. That's what it went towards this month. That's the content I got. Now, granted, it, like you said, it is kind of quick. Although I have to say that that's not necessarily the norm. Some of the DCUO patches, DLC has taken a while, or they've created a whole new class and things along that line. So that's not necessarily always the case. I know that with ESO, their DLC can take a while to get through sometimes. I know that Arsenium doesn't take too long to get through, but there's other things that came with it that is repeatable and takes, like for the arena that they have is just absolutely amazing, the Maelstrom Arena, because it pits you against other players and in a PvE kind of content. So I think that more often, even if it's a little bit smaller, is both beneficial to the studio as well as the player, because you get to immediately see what you're getting for your money.
Of course, it's beneficial to the studio.
Well, it's beneficial. Well, right, of course, right. It's beneficial to the studio in the sense that, from a customer service standpoint, they get to see immediately what the players are liking, what they're not liking. Whereas whenever you have a large content, what if Heavensward sucked? I mean, not saying that because it didn't. It was really good. But what if it did? They won't have anything else for, I don't know, at least another year, right?
It was 4 months before the 3.1 patch dropped. So you have at least 4 months before they would start adjusting too much. And then, yeah, generally over the course of that year, they would be adjusting in reaction to bad player feedback in each patch. So, and then the next expansion would presumably erase what they had done in certain measures. So, yeah, over the course of the next year, they would have to go back and fix things that players didn't like. But let me ask you this then. I mean, I'm cool with DLC type content, and you mentioned DCUO and Elder Scrolls Online doing well on consoles. And I don't think doing well on consoles is a good mark of this particular question, because granted, they're 2 out of 6 big titles that are available on consoles, so doing well is a very relative term as far as the market size on the consoles. And I don't think whether they were doing it like Final Fantasy XIV or the models that they've opted to go with has anything to do with why they're doing well. But let me ask you this, though. We're both Star Wars: The Old Republic fans, you more so than I, admittedly. We both enjoyed Knights of the Old Republic. We talked about it on a free Knights of Fallen Empire. We talked about it on a free-to-play cast over on MMO Bomb when it launched, and it's harkened back to story and everything. But since that launch, what have you been doing? Well, there's really only 2 things you've probably been doing. Most players have been doing your Alliance stuff and your Star Fortresses, which are extremely repetitive to begin with. And I'm not saying that there's not a grind of some type in every MMO when you get in between those patch cycles. Yes, it happens in Final Fantasy as well. When you're a month away from the patch and you're running the same 5 or 6 dungeons over and over to farm tomestones and get the next piece of gear while you wait for the new portion of the raid to open up. That's inevitable in all of these games. But wouldn't you rather have a diverse section, a cross-section of things to do if you're going to be repeating things? Then, to me, all the Star Fortresses look almost identical. There's really... Yeah, there's some slight variance in them, but I'm running the same things over and over, the literal, almost exact same thing over and over and over and over again. And in DCUO, once I've gone through the story content, which only takes me 2 or 3 days, the story portion of it, and I dabble into the other things that they've added, the content for me, particularly when paying a subscription, is just so small that I can't justify, okay, I've got to spend Knights of the Fallen Empire exception, we got it for free as long as you were a sub, but previous expansions you did have to pay for, some of them. And DCUO, you have to be a station member to be able to do that, so you have to carry the sub to do that stuff. There is some type of cost involved for a day or two of new content, and then a month to a month and a half, if they stay on that accelerated schedule, which you've mentioned already. Sometimes they don't, particularly in DCUO. I just would rather have a lot more content. If I bang out the story in Final Fantasy in 2 or 3 days, which I normally do when the patch drops, sometimes even shorter than 2 days, I still have a broad range of things that I'm going to be repeating if I need to repeat content. Where with these smaller patches, I hit that same repetition wall, but now my selection of things to do in that repetition wall is very, very tiny, to the point of I don't want to pay and do this anymore. It's extremely boring. I just rather have more content, provided I know when the next content is going to be, and that's my problem with World of Warcraft. We're going to wait until next summer for anything in World of Warcraft if you're not playing on the alpha or beta servers, and to me, no way. Ugh. Come on, you've got to be sick of Star Fortresses right now.
Well, see, that's
even you.
No,
you
I
have
to say, I do not do Star Fortresses. I will admit that a lot of my game time is doing other things that, like for instance, I help run a RP guild, so we run RP events and things along that line. But that is, I don't consider that as part of what Knights of the Fallen Empire has offered me. So I don't. That's
your guild offers you.
Yeah. My guild offers me that. So I don't. That's not included there. However, that being said, my guild beyond that does. We do raids, which the raids that they have are. Well, see, I hate entering this into that part of the debate, because we haven't really got into some of the where we start repeating content over, or not repeating. Sorry, so where we start getting regular content, because what they've allowed to do with Knights of the Fallen Empire is they've reorganized the core game, the vanilla game, if you will, the game that existed before Knights of the Fallen Empire, and they've changed that into something different. And that's what I'm doing now. Is mostly I'm doing the content that was outdated before this patch, and they've created this patch to where now everything that was old is new again, and so there's a little bit of that going on. So I think that just in general using Knights of the Fallen Empire as an example is a little bit off, because we haven't seen the regular content come out. That being said, though, with things like Strongholds and DLCs that came before that, I think that I kind of like the idea, again, going back to the fact that we see what's coming up, and we know it's coming up soon. And I think when you're dealing with big patches, even like if we look at I don't know if this is necessarily the best example, but Guild Wars 2 with Heart of Thorns, it was okay. We're waiting for the patch. What's going on now? Okay, we're doing the same things we've been doing, waiting for this patch, and so I'm paying for literally months of doing the same thing I'd been doing for the last year or so, and that's the way. And I think that Final Fantasy might be the exception to the rule, because the rule in the past has been that you don't really get anything until that expansion hits, and I would be more interested in seeing something from month to month.
But look at the other side of the exact example you gave. Guild Wars 2, back when they did the whole living story thing, that was content being updated on a 3-week, 4-week schedule every single time you turned around, and that eventually became a huge problem with most of the audience with that type of content going in. And yeah, it was exciting to have new content every couple of weeks, but the way they were implementing it meant that if you weren't playing, there was a likelihood that you were going to be left out of some certain things because you happened to be on vacation with your family for a couple of weeks. Now, that's an implementation example. Yeah, that has nothing to do with a small DLC type thing versus an expansion, but it's a danger that can happen when you're trying to release that type of content. Plus, you start getting into, it's a more aggressive release schedule, which means we need to sacrifice a little bit of time on here, a little bit of time on QA, a little bit of time on all these other things. And so you're much more prone to bugs and things like that along the way. It's just, I don't think it's good for the player or the developer, because it puts a pressure on the developer that isn't there when you have a 3 or 4 month release window between patches and a 1 to 1.5 year release schedule between expansions. You just have to make those patches and expansions worth the wait. And thus far, to me, Final Fantasy XIV has done that. Blizzard and World of Warcraft used to do that. To me, that's why I played in Vanilla and Burning. Well, I actually started when Burning Crusade just launched, so I shouldn't say Vanilla. But Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King, and then you compare that to Cataclysm and Pandaria and Legion, and it's becoming so drawn out that it's not worth it there. So I go for bigger patches, but I need a developer that's going to stick to the timeline that they present.
I think that what you hit on there with what's happening currently with World of Warcraft is a downfall of that kind of release schedule. Is that
using my argument against me? This is unheard of.
But I think that's the question is. I mean, like you mentioned, we've only seen one expansion from Final Fantasy. Are they going to be able to keep up that kind of release schedule going forward? Because if
I just talked to Yoshi P on the and he assured me, because I told him where I was going with this question.
Yeah, and he was like, "Dude, we're with it. Next year, no."
And he gave me the release date, but he told me I couldn't make it public. So.
So yeah, I just wonder if it's sustainable. I mean, because if we use World of Warcraft as evidence of it, that it becomes less and less sustainable as the years go on, and then even like with EverQuest and EverQuest 2, there's always it just keeps, either the patches get smaller or the release dates become.
You mean a game that went from doing expansions and was going to do smaller pieces of DLC-like content and then decided, no, this isn't the right thing to do, and so they went back to the expansions? You mean those games that flip-flopped on that and still ended up with the expansions?
Who knows anymore? Well, their expansions, though, are smaller and than they were in the past, and so
they come out every year.
I get that, but I think that they keep getting those patches keep getting smaller and smaller, and it becomes to the point where their smaller releases are about the same size. Their older, smaller releases are about the same size as their expansions now. So Anyway, so what I'm going to do, since we don't have a moderator or judge in this case. I'm going to throw it to you guys. Who won this debate? You can vote. I got a poll going in this post, and they didn't see you point at yourself there, Mike, because the camera's just on me now.
Well, aren't we just full of ego?
so at any rate, I'll put a poll there at the bottom. That's that first question here. Let's. I'm
just going to have a little snack. You forgive me, because I totally scored on that question.
Oh, God.
Oh, yes, he did.
That's horrible.
Carry on.
Not a sponsor, by the way. Not a sponsor.
All right, let's go.
All right. As he chokes on his score there. All right. So the second question sent by Dwayne is free to play always better? Apparently, folks are raising a stink over Overwatch's buy to play model. Gosh, I think.
So which way are we going to debate this? Are we going to debate free-to-play always being better, or are we going to debate Overwatch's buy-to-play model?
Yeah, I think that's a debate in and of itself. Should we?
Right.
Because I'm gonna go with let's go with Overwatch's particular model. I think that's the bigger question here.
The answer is no. Free-to-play is not always better.
All right. Well, we heard Mike's answer.
But we'll go with the Overwatch for the debate. For the debate.
And
you can go first.
See, I'm personally on the fence with this, but I'm going to if push come to shove, I would put Overwatch as I think it would be better to be a free to play game, and
wow, okay,
and I'll put it to you this because I think that is if you look at like Team Fortress 2 and others that are going free to play that are very similar games, even if you look at League of Legends, and if you compare because it's a very comparable game, although it's obviously we're talking first person shooter and that kind of thing, but it's still one of the things with Overwatch, and this is why I think that it would do well as a free to play game, because if we look at what makes Overwatch great, one of the things that makes Overwatch great is the attachment to that character that you happen to be playing. Now, granted, you can switch in the match, but there is an attachment to those characters, and there is a you want to see what some of these other characters are about and what they're like, even if they're kind of even similar kind of play styles. You still want to see what they're about and why they're cool. And I think that like other like the League of Legends games and the Dota games and things along that line, the characters become more than just this the weapon that they're attached to. Because like if you look at if you look at Battlefront, for instance, it's
oh
really,
God!
I know
everything comes back to Star Wars with you. Damn it!
Yeah, I know. Well, it just released, so so if you look at Battlefront, for instance, I mean, it really becomes there isn't a character investment in that. You're invested in the weapon that they're carrying and things along and that kind of thing. The mechanics of the character, whereas with unless you get to the ultimate characters, which anyway, that's a whole nother story. But if you look at Overwatch, you are attached to those particular characters. That character becomes not just the weapon that he or she carries. He becomes this this story. You're trying to tell this story with it, and the other thing that's really really cool with it is that and something that I don't think a lot of people think about all the time, but the silhouettes of those characters are just very interesting to look at, and they're interesting to watch, and it just becomes a really cool game. And I think that with that, given that these characters are the most important, that if like League of Legends, like Dota, you can then sell those characters individually, and they become something that people then are attached to, and they want more of them. You create more characters along the same lines that League of Legends does. But in order for people to get attached to these characters, you give it to them for free. You let them play them, say, oh, I really like that, and then kind of like League of Legends does, take them away for a little while, and then so that they buy them and that sort of thing. You can also buy skins. There's all sorts of things you can do with that as a free-to-play game that I think that a buy-to-play game doesn't exactly offer, because you have to buy a whole chunk of them at once. But go ahead, I throw it to you.
I agree with everything you said, but I disagree with the conclusion you arrive at for those reasons. Originally, when we saw Overwatch, two BlizzCons ago, I think was the first time we got a peek at it. It kind of was like a no-brainer in everybody's head. Oh, this is going to be free-to-play. It's like a Team Fortress 2 type game. And then we knew we had Paladins. Well, I don't think we knew we had Paladins 2 BlizzCons ago, but Paladins shortly was announced after that. And then obviously you have Gigantic, and you have a bunch of these team-based shooters that are coming out over the course of 2015, 2016, and their preponderance of them are free-to-play. And so we just kind of thought, well, this is Blizz getting into that market, just like they got into the free-to-play card game with Hearthstone, just like they got into the free-to-play MOBA with Dota. Overwatch is Blizzard's free-to-play foray into the team-based shooter. And we just kind of said, yeah, that makes sense, no problem. They'll sell characters, they'll sell skins, they'll make a fortune, because I'm sure Blizzard will do it pretty well, and hey, it looks pretty neat here at BlizzCon while we're playing it. But then we started to learn a little bit more about the game and the attachment to the characters that you spoke of, and they didn't want them to be just cookie cutter, go grab the heavy, go grab the medic, go grab this. They wanted them to have their own personalities, their own storylines, their own look, their own feel, their own silhouette, and you to become attached to these characters. But each character serves a different type of function. And then they added the one gameplay wrinkle that I think decided their model right off the bat. And that was the ability to switch from one character to another character in the middle of a match. So that if you had a team of a bunch of attack and you needed some heals, then one person, when they died, they were able to switch to a heal character and jump into the battle and level it out a bit for your team. And that mechanic right there, I think, kind of sealed the buy-to-play model, and I agree with the decision to do so. Because the last thing that you want in this type of game, if you're going to make it free to play, is the appearance of having to spend money. Now, whether that's for gear or for characters, for some advantage of some type, you don't want the appearance of having to pay for that advantage. And by locking characters, which would have been the logical free-to-play monetization for a game like this, is give you 8 characters and we'll cycle in freebies, we'll do a League of Legends, a Dota 2, we'll cycle in freebies, and then we'll cycle them out, and if you want them, you can buy them, and we'll sell packs, and we'll sell skins, and we'll sell all of that stuff. That's great, until you get gamers feeling like, you know what, if I don't have access to Hero A or Hero B, then my entire team, if none of us happen to buy those characters, we're trying to be free-to-play players and either farm up a currency to buy them in-game, but it takes exponentially longer or whatever, then we are at a tactical disadvantage and we're trapped behind a paywall there. Giving all the characters to everybody makes a lot more tactical sense and balanced sense as far as keeping the teams and the competition spirit even. So what does that leave you with if you're going to go free to play? Well, of course you have skins, which Overwatch is going to have skins anyway. Let's make no mistake about that. They're going to be selling cosmetic things like that. But that's really all it leaves you with is those cosmetic changes. Since you've already made the decision of we don't want the characters locked behind a paywall, then you certainly aren't going to lock any type of gear or stat influence behind a paywall. You've already made one good decision. You're not going to follow it up with something that's going to wreck that initial decision. It just makes more sense. Go out and get your 30 to 60 or whatever pack you end up buying dollars per box, because you're Blizzard. You're going to put out a decent product, and it's going to pretty much be quality tested with a few bugs here and there. Maybe your servers suck, error 37. But but you're going to have a decent product. I'm going to spend a couple of bucks. I'm going to have full access to it. Nobody's going to be starting on a tactical advantage because they bought the $40 Founders Pack and have all the characters while I get stuck with the 6 stock free-to-play characters. This one is kind of a no-brainer. Once that mechanic was introduced, this buy-to-play made a lot more sense here. No, free-to-play is not always better, particularly in this type of scenario. But I wouldn't be surprised if a few years down the road, this does go free-to-play when those box sales are done. That just makes sense to me, too. But for launch, buy-to-play was the right way to go.
Because I definitely see where you're coming from. And but I think...
Larry always does that. Always does that. Every show I've ever been on here it makes you feel good. He's like, yes, I see what you're saying. I understand. It's wrong, but
exactly. I think the biggest thing that we're going to run into when we don't have a free-to-play game like this, and I guess since it's Blizzard, it's like the only one that could probably get away with this.
There's definitely something to be said there too.
Yeah, and is that the barrier to entry is going to be, what was it, $40 for the lowest one, I think, or whatever, whatever it is. Is that with that? I don't want to say steep because it's not steep, but because there is that barrier of entry, I think that is going to deter some people from playing. But I don't. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. I mean, give me as many people as we possibly can. Let's overload those servers and let's kill everything. And I think though to counter your argument regarding not having the right team base, and like for instance, if you don't have somebody that is a healer on your team and you can switch that out, well, you have those free characters that you'll be able to use, and all that Blizzard has to do in order to get that to work is make sure that the roles are filled each time they make that rotation. And so therefore there's always going to, even if it's not the healer that you want, it's the healer that you deserve.
Yes, I was hoping you would finish that. Oh, you're my hero. I was like, please finish that. Please finish that. That's amazing. It was so organic. It was kudos to you, sir. It was very well done.
All right, yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but I get that, and it might be balanced from a statistical point. As long as I've got these 2 healers in the freebies, and there's 3 other healers that you have to pay for, but statistically there's no real advantage over the other one. It doesn't matter. In the back end, it may be totally balanced. There will always be a perceived imbalance because this particular healer specializes in burst healing. This particular healer specializes in damage over time, and that's the one we kind of needed because we were going up against this team that was killing us with damage over time. They weren't bursting us down. They were killing, and that's the healer that we needed for this particular battle. It would have been a lot more fair if we had that, and that one was $8 and none of us had purchased it. So yeah, in the back end it may be balanced as healer, tank, deeps, whatever the case may be. But there's always going to be that perception of, well, if we would have had access to that healer, this match would have been a lot better, even though we had access to 2 other healers in the freebie lineup. I would just have a hard time, and yeah, you were right, it's $40 for the base version. The Origins version's more. There's definitely something to be said that Blizzard is one of the few companies that could get away with taking something in this genre and making it buy to play to start with, because of the installed fan base with the Blizzard products to begin with. I'm not discounting that at all. Had Snail Games decided to pull this, I would have told them that this was dead in the water. But for Blizzard with Overwatch, the way they're doing it, buy-to-play just makes sense. It gets rid of all of that inherent debatable stuff on, well, if I would have spent $8, this game wants to nickel and dime me, and you don't have to worry about being nickel and dime. Shell out your $40, you're going to get a hell of a game, and if you want to buy some skins and cosmetics along the way, go for it. If you don't, okay, you bought the game, so you have access to everything in the game. I just think it's a win-win.
Yeah, I think just a small counter to the idea that you needed a specific healer or you needed a specific tank or something along that line. I think the counter to that is, well, what does Riot do? What does these other games do? They don't. It's not really a part of their. They don't really. I don't want to say they don't. Well, no, they don't really care. They really don't. But that's really what it boils down to. And I think that having it free to play and offering the idea to rotate through specific characters will allow better access to more characters and allow players to experience whenever they start adding new characters to Overwatch, because you know they're going to.
Oh, definitely.
So when they start doing that, that's going to allow them, the rotation is going to allow them to bring in new characters, whereas that's a little bit difficult to do with buy-to-play. But with free-to-play, you can.
I would, excuse me, which is why I don't see a free-to-play conversion in the game's future as something that's all that unrealistic. I just find that for the launch scenario with 12 to 15 champions, something like that. The launch scenario, it makes more sense to me to be buy-to-play, and then 3 years down the road when you have 30 heroes in the game or 40 heroes in the game, yeah, I can certainly see some type of free-to-play model with a rotation mixed in there. But you want me to care about these characters, you want each of them to be unique, and so you can't flood me with characters to begin with, which makes the buy-to-play model make even more sense for me.
All right, well, there you go, guys. That's pretty much it as far as free to play versus buy to play on Overwatch. So it goes to you again. Vote in below and let us know what you think, and you decide the winner here. So the last questions that we have 3 different questions. These last 3 ones, we'll try to get through. Oh gosh, I totally had the camera off of you at that point. I'm sorry. he was just
having some more score. Don't worry about it.
Score again. Oh. So I think, man, this next question, I guess I'll read the whole thing, and this is basically when it comes down to it is a.
So these are like 3 little mini debates we're gonna do. Or are we doing one big debate with all of this stuff? This is a Viking.
No.
Type.
These are 3 different questions that Viking has sent over
right.
over the course of time. But anyway, this first one is pretty much a PvP versus PvE debate. Let's get real. That's what it is. And he says in every PvE versus PvP debate, or excuse me, PvP versus PvE debate, there is. Those who defend PvP often reason that it's no fun to fight NPCs and Care Bears. If there is no real people to fight, then the MMO feels empty. PvEers, I have no idea what.
On the other hand,
okay, that's what. On the other hand, are more interested in things like trading, mining, crafting, and other things that don't involve fighting. Why is it that PvPers are only interested in combat? Isn't this a narrow-minded look at MMOs in general? Because if MMOs are only about combat, they'd surely be empty and dull. Also, how can they say that NPCs are no challenge when fact today's computers can beat any human easily? Shouldn't they instead ask the game developers to provide less dumbed-down combat NPCs, at least on the higher levels? So there's a few things in here, and it's really
there's a lot going on.
Yeah. And there's a couple of assumptions in here that I'd like to kind of push aside here a little bit. Is the assumption that first off, the last one is that the computers creating NPCs that can beat humans,
which Viking is absolutely right.
Yes.
You can, but that's not exactly the best way to mass market a product if you design something that pummels anybody that plays it.
Right. Yeah. You're looking for what's difficult, and I think Mike and I agree on this. That what's difficult here is not can we make something that nobody can beat. It's more of a can we make something that is a challenge yet still fun. And that's where you find the PvE problems there. And the other one that without trade, without mining, without these other things, are MMOs dull? And I think we're both in agreement that doesn't necessarily make them dull. To have a game that is completely about combat doesn't make an MMO dull. I think that it doesn't necessarily. I believe put it that way. It doesn't necessarily. There are some that are clearly dull because they're all about combat. But But yeah, I don't think that's. I think that's an inherent problem with the game itself, and not necessarily just because it's about combat. So I think the question here then is really boils down to PvP. I mean PvP versus PvE. Which one offers more?
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And it goes. I'm throwing this to you. I answered it first last time, so I'm throwing it to you first on this one.
Yeah, but we're both PvE Care Bears. I mean, you PvP more than I do, but you're definitely a PvE guy too. And when it comes down to it, all right, I'll take the challenge. I'll go with PvP.
Okay, all right.
Oh shit! I am. This one's kind of a no-brainer for me, though. Even though I generally am not a PvPer, I am having a lot of fun with Paladins right now, by the way, which is exclusively PvP. When you're not playing the bots, which are ridiculously easy to steamroll because they're training. It's not meant to be played like that. But I just think when you look at games like Overwatch, when you look at games like Paladins, when you look at games like Dota 2 and League of Legends, pure combat PvP certainly offers something that the mix of PvE and PvP or just PvE just can't capture. And that's the randomness of it, or the unexpectedness of it. And I think that's a big, big factor when you start looking at PvP-only games. When you have your MMORPGs, your Star Wars, your Final Fantasies, your World of Warcraft, you have a known entity in the PvE content, and either you're going to be able to beat it or you aren't. And if you aren't able to beat it, you're going to know why. Either your DPS wasn't high enough, your gear isn't quite there, you didn't have the right composition of party, you weren't getting out of the damn fire. You know why you didn't achieve that goal. And it's a challenge, a fun challenge, granted, because I'm a PvE Care Bear, so I enjoy that type of stuff too, very much, raids and things like that, and mechanics and progression and learning the fights. But it's a known entity. And I think the thrill of the PvP side of the argument is you may not necessarily know exactly why you lost in a teamed-based game, which most PvP is. In a solo game, maybe you can figure it out. But in the team-based Dotas and the League of Legends and things like that, you have an idea of where you personally may have screwed up. The other 4 people on my team certainly know exactly where I screwed up because they will all yell and scream and tell me where I screwed up. But they won't acknowledge where they may be screwed up to, and I wasn't really watching the mid because I was pushing top, and I don't know really what happened in mid. We're not on a voice chat or anything. There's just something inherently exciting about the variable. Wow, what happened there? How did we push, and then get steamrolled and have a game that was lopsided to begin with go entirely the other way, where you don't have that type of random action. You typically don't have a raid that pushes, and then all of a sudden loses and doesn't know exactly where they screwed up. We funked. You don't have to bleep. We funked up on that one mechanic and we all got wiped. I just think there's something that makes PvP exciting is when it's just a bunch of humans all reacting in different ways and trying to react in a way that their opponent isn't expecting, that whole chess thinking 5 moves ahead. It's just the strategy and the randomness in those battles, that's exciting. And I don't think you can really argue with that being poor gameplay when it's just combat, when League of Legends and Dota 2 and all these combat-based games are as popular and as money-making machines as they are. Clearly, there's something to be said for a game that is combat-only against other people done correctly. That's the clincher. We have examples of it done correctly and not done correctly. I'm going down the done correctly side.
All right, so I'm going to have to. I'm going to approach it from this direction. I'm going to say that you can have a purely PvE oriented game and be engaging and have an incredible community, and really encourage people to play your game more and to participate in what everybody else is doing. I think the major downfall of PvE-oriented games is not that they're PvP-oriented games is not PvP itself, because I think that there's always going to inherently be some sort of competition or PvP kind of subject matter, whatever you want to call it, within a game, a multiplayer game, regardless of what it is. I mean, if you're trading on the auction house, there's I'm going to, it's always going to be there's always going to be those people that are going to want to have the most money or have more money than everybody else. Where do I score as far as that's concerned? There's always going to be those kinds of people. But I think that
where do you score?
I think the biggest issue, though, is that the direct competition creates strife within a community, and even amongst the team itself, more so than PvE content. Of course, there's going to be people that are going to be highly competitive on the PvE side that are going to argue with each other as to who did what and why and where. But I don't think there is. I think the meta for PvP versus PvE is pretty similar as far as what the thought process going into it. Obviously, there's different strategies, but I think the amount of thought and the amount of thinking or processing that has to go into it is the same. The other thing is, and this is the big kicker, I think, for PvE versus PvP, is that you can absolutely balance PvE. You can absolutely balance it. You can get to a point in a game where there is balance. And whereas with PvP, because of that human element in there is always going to be this people that are trying to skirt around some sort of rules, or trying to tweak something to where it's slightly better, and there's always going to be some things that are unseen by the developers and the computers. Whereas PvE, it's always going to be balanced. It's going to be, the community is going to be, generally speaking, nicer. It's going to be more friendly. You're going to enjoy it more, and I think that's what it boils down to.
And I think that's the inherent problem. And again, PvE Care Bear, right? Totally love leading a raid and all that stuff, but that's one of the problems for me is in this particular argument is when you've done that big be-all end-all raid in your game, whatever your game is for right now, when you've beaten it the first time, because it is perfectly balanced for those gear levels, for those level characters, for that composition makeup, for that team that knew what they were doing, because it is perfectly balanced like that, as soon as you've beaten it, you're done. And yeah, you're going to run that thing over and over and over again, but the only reason you're going to do so is because it didn't drop the loot that everybody needed on your first kill. If it did, nobody would go and do those raids again. Everybody would take their team in, kill it, get everything they needed, and then go do other things. You keep running it over and over and over again to either train new players on how to do it by switching in a person or two into your raid group so that everybody gets some experience, or by getting the gear that didn't drop the last time you did it. It becomes a chore at that point, not something, and maybe the first handful of times it's still fun and exciting because yeah, we barely beat it last time and we almost died this time, but now we're getting the hang of it, and it's just, we go in, it's on farm status. I mean, for crying out loud, people say it in trade chat, on farms, this on farm status, this on farm status, and that's what it becomes. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but eventually farm status isn't fun, it isn't challenging, it's a chore. PvP doesn't become that. because I always have somebody that's trying to beat the mechanics of the game. I always have somebody that's trying to react to what I am doing in a way that I'm not going to anticipate. I always have me trying to think, what are they going to do if I do this, and I'll do this instead and see how they react. Or I've got teammates that I know are doing this. Let me push these people into the jungle and see what happens there. That's good. It's just that constant reaction. And there is something to be said about Vikings saying that it's no fun to fight NPCs or Care Bears. I think it's fun. I think it's fun. I get owned in every PvP thing besides Paladins. I don't know what it is about Paladins, but I'm damn good at it. But every other PvP thing, I get owned. I don't care. I think it's fun. It's something fun. It's something different. The matches are always going to be different. Even if they're on the exact same map with the exact same team makeup, it's going to be different. And that's something that PvE just cannot offer. If you take that same fight, that raid fight, with the same group on the same map, guess what happens? You have the same fight. You don't have that in the PvP side.
All right. Well, to counter that a little bit, because I do want to get through some of these questions a little bit faster, but just to give a quick counter to that, there's a couple of things that I think that you can always mix up PvE, and you can always put a different class in there versus the one that you'd been running with the whole time, or learn another class and like run like we used to do, like running all in Star Wars: The Old Republic. We would run all sorcerers or all inquisitors, so it'd be an all inquisitor kind of. Can we get through all of that? Well, there's always some way to mix it up. So once you're in farm status, that it becomes a little bit, becomes more challenging and that kind of thing. And you go and you mentioned that that because of farm status and whatnot, that it becomes boring or becomes routine really quickly. And I think that, honestly, I think that PvP becomes routine and boring and quicker. And a reason being is because once you get to a point to where where newbies are no longer a challenge, and the majority of MMOs don't offer a good elo system. The exception, a minor exception, would be like League of Legends. I think they have a pretty decent elo system. Most of them, but however, that being said, that is one out of however many do we have that have PvP in it? Yeah. So there's no decent elo system, and so therefore you get to a point to where you're just stomping all over everybody whenever you get the right gear or the right team composition, and also on top of that, you can't, in most situations in MMOs, you can't play whatever class you want. Whereas in PvE, you can play whatever class you want. Generally speaking, you can play whatever class you want and be able to get by in PvE. Whereas in PvP, there are absolutely classes that you have to play in order to be viable in PvP, and it just becomes overbearing and, for me, boring. And like, oh well, I'm running up against a rogue. I know I'm going to lose because I'm another squishy DPS. I don't know.
Can I ask you one question on the point you just made?
Yeah.
If you took your entire raid of Inquisitors, excuse me, into a raid that you had beaten before, and that boss reacted differently based on your party's composition or makeup that day because you decided your guild was going to be silly and take a bunch of Inquisitors in, don't you think that would be more interesting than if you ran in there knowing exactly what to expect because you'd been there with 5 other classes? Wouldn't that be more interesting?
It would be more interesting.
That's PvP.
It's not PvP. It's not PvP.
That's PvP. If you go in there with a bunch of Inquisitors, the team's going to react differently than if you came in with a diverse group.
That's true to a point, but it would be true if there was a game that had good balance. I believe that that would be absolutely true, but there really isn't. a game that has good balance. There's always going to be.
So fine. So we agree. Just these game designers don't know what they're doing.
There we go.
Now we're on the same page.
All right. So anyway, let me throw that. I'll go ahead and throw that debate maybe out the window. But we'll throw it over to. We'll throw it to you.
Like YouTube. I can't even take a bite of the score bar there.
All right. So audience, it's up to you. What do you think? PvE versus PvP. Oh God, I'm dreading the comments on that one. I'm looking forward to it. I wanna see you guys at each other's throat. That'd be great. All right, so this next one is kind of interesting. I kind of like this one quite a bit because I've had this debate myself with myself. It's kind of interesting talking to myself in the mirror. Viking says gamers often.
You're debating yourself in the mirror? Wait, what?
Debating myself in the mirror, yeah.
Boy, word that carefully. Make sure you enunciate.
Gamers often say, I'd rather have good gameplay than good graphics, but does it have to be either or? Can it be both? Why do gamers say this? Is it because they've never seen a game which had both good gameplay and good graphics and therefore think it's impossible somehow? Or is it because they are on a game platform that can't get the best graphics and they are sort of defending the platform that they use? So
is this really a debatable one, or is this just like we kind of give our opinions?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of there's a question here.
Okay.
And the big question is can you have, and I'm probably going to take a contrary stance on this one. I think
Okay.
Can you have a game that has good graphics and good gameplay? Is it possible to do that? And I think that's really the debate here when it comes down to it. I mean, I have to personally say I'm going to say no to this one, which is a little. I don't think you can, and I don't think. And this is what it boils down to for me. It's not because I don't think that it is impossible to do. I don't think that it. I mean, like the technology exists for us to have good graphics and good gameplay. So I think that we can't debate that. I mean, that's just that. That's kind of stupid to kind of debate that because the technology exists. But what we don't have is the studios willing to invest in both good gameplay and good graphics. I think what we run into is we have studios that have to, because of budgetary concerns, we have studios that will invest in, we have to get this amazing look, and it has to look. Let's go back to like Battlefront, for instance. We have to go and we have to get these graphics to look amazing and look like you're in the Star Wars universe, right? We have to get that to look good, and we have to really push the limit as far as graphical fidelity is concerned. But in order to do that, in order to fit that into our budget, we have to kind of clone this other game that exists over here and just slap another skin on it. And I think that's the biggest problem. Is not that the technology doesn't exist or the minds out there don't exist. I just don't think that there is the budget to do it, and it's not just. And I also think that it's not. And it doesn't just boil down to the studios not willing to front the money for it. It also boils down to the players that want to play it, because it's ultimately going to be a situation where the budget is going to be so high that it has to make up for all the loss, and there's not going to be any profit. And so, therefore, I think that's where the problem boils down to. It boils down to money and not necessarily technology. Mike, take it away.
I am flabbergasted. Wow. Viking, the reason gamers say it is because it's more of a if I could only have one, which would I rather have question. It's not that we're settling for one or the other. It's more of a philosophical, if I could only have one, I'd rather have a game that has more better gameplay than graphics. Yes, it's certainly possible. It's certainly possible to have both, and we have numerous examples of it. Come on. Final Fantasy XIV, the original, version 1, you can't even debate. Beautiful game. Beautiful, right? If you would debate me that it was a beautiful game, I would be shocked. And that it was graphically impressive. It was so graphically impressive that a lot of computers had a hard time running it. That's how graphically impressive the game was. Even a.k.a. Mike B. in his fantastic BFF report video for Final Fantasy XIV, the original version, as badly as he tore the game apart, rightfully so, the one thing he did give it was, besides being copy-pasted in areas, the graphics visually were stunning. The gameplay sucked ass. It was awful. It was awful. That's why it collapsed. So you have an example of, I got the graphics, I didn't get the gameplay. Then they rebuilt this, and they rebuilt the gameplay. The graphics are still there. They rebuilt the gameplay. And now you have a game that has millions of players. Millions. Think about that. It's got to be, if Square Enix would actually release numbers, it's got to be second to World of Warcraft. I just can't think of anywhere else it would be as far as the number of players. And it's 2 years later. It's not like this is the new sexy. This came out 2 years ago, and it is still in the millions. You can certainly have good graphics and good gameplay, and it's not just restricted to an MMORPG. That's the context we put it in because we're both MMORPG guys, and we both happen to work for MMO sites, so that's the context, the framing we're putting it on. But it's not restricted to just that genre either. You have Rainbow Six Siege. Technical flaws aside, visually impressive, a lot of great gameplay. Now, they had to go through and fix some technical flaws. I'm not saying that you shouldn't take that into consideration, but when we're looking at gameplay and graphics, both of those things were there. We could certainly have it. We've had it for years. Go back and look at the Genesis and the Super Nintendo. At the time, those were the highest graphic capabilities you could get. We were mind blown when we saw them. And Super Mario World had some of the best graphics and gameplay available at the time. It's kind of silly to me to think otherwise, that we can only have one or the other.
Wow, I do agree that it's definitely possible, but I do think that one will always take a huge precedent over the other one, and I think your Final Fantasy example is a great example of that, because graphics took a high precedent over gameplay. That's what they focused on. Now, granted, we did get a reboot of it, but that took more money and more time invested than they originally wanted to, and I think that's kind of where this argument boils down to. Is, I mean, can we count a game? I guess this is up to the audience here. Can we count a game that has had to reboot or has had to add had to add gameplay later? I mean, can we count that? I personally, I don't necessarily count that because it's not originally in the budget. It's like, oh, we had to do that later because it's the perfect example of the point you made, which was cost being the factor. Yeah,
this was going to cost even more, and you had a company willing to do it.
Well, here the big thing, and I do want to point this out regarding Final Fantasy XIV, and going back to Mike B's review, is
such a great video. If you don't know what we're really talking about, go watch it.
It really is. I'll see if I can find a link to it. But I think it is because he talks about the copy pasta.
Oh yeah,
and I think that is a graphic fidelity issue. Even there, they had issues with as far as graphics were concerned, and I just don't think that it's I don't think it's possible. You always have to, in some fashion, pull the graphics down a hair or a bit in order to get the gameplay fidelity versus the graphic fidelity. I think if we go back to Overwatch as an example, even in its state right now, it is a super smooth game. And it is pretty. I don't want to. I'm not going. I won't debate the fact that Overwatch is a good-looking game. But that being said, the graphic fidelity is not the same as, say, Battlefront. It's not to that level. Doesn't make it a bad game. I think that I don't think that is really the argument here. Is just, can you have both? Can you have a really high fidelity game and a really high gameplay? And that's what it boils down to for me. I don't think you can, and it has to do with money, really, when it comes down to it.
I think you can, and we already have for decades now.
All right, there we go. That's what do you think? Do we have it already, or does it boil down to money? That's the debate in the comments. The last question here, which is kind of funny, also from Viking. He says, is first-person universe really a new genre, or is it only something that Cloud Imperium claims Star Citizen is becoming? If it is a first-person universe, then what makes it deserve that label? Which features combined make it something else than what we've seen before? And is this something other than game studios? Is this something other game studios should do? Also, what do you think? I'm gonna. Did you take the last? I lost track now. Did you go first last time? No, I went first last time.
Yeah, you went first on the last one and took a surprising view. I took the surprising view on the PvP one. No, first-person universe is a freaking marketing term. It has nothing to... oh, my God. It's not its own genre. First-person universe... oh, God. Elder Scrolls Online, for crying out loud, can be played in a first... even Final Fantasy XIV, God, can be played in a first-person viewpoint. It's marketing hyperbole. It means nothing. It means we're going to put you in an open world or a universe. It may not even be open. Some things may be zoned or phased or whatever. We're going to put you in a world through a first person. FPU means nothing. Nothing, Larry. It's a made-up term because they didn't want to go with anything else that might be able to attribute their gameplay or their product into a genre that already exists. Because everything about and I'm excited about Star Citizen. I'm also worried. I mean, I have my reservations about the product too, but that's a different debate for a different show. I think there's the capability for Star Citizen to do some really cool things, and has been for a while, but I don't think everything about Star Citizen has to be new and redefining and genre-bending, and it's a made-up marketing term that games already have. No, Viking, it does not need to be its own new term. Star Citizen doesn't deserve that label because no game deserves that label. Anything that has any type of persistent world and gives you a first-person viewpoint, to me, could be classified as FPU. So, F you, FPU.
Oh, that's going to be a tough one to follow. I got to admit, that's going to be a real tough one to follow. But I'm going to give it a shot here. Let me throw this at you, and I'm probably going to be a part of that whole marketing hype train that's going on to say something like this. But I do believe there is some merit to the term first-person universe, and the reason. Now, just go with me here.
I'm eagerly awaiting the.
I think what makes this a first-person universe versus the the Elder Scrolls that are out there versus any of the other games that you can play first person. I think Elder Scrolls is really the only one that is specifically designed to be first person. I know you can play others as first person, but aren't necessarily. But anyway, but that being said, I think what separates this and what is intended to separate this is that the first person universe, I take it less of a mechanical, I'm looking at it from a first person point of view, but more so this character is first person as far as the story is concerned, that this person isn't another character, but rather this character is you. And you actually are enveloped in this world, and you become this character living in, the Star Citizen universe. And I think that the point of view mechanically becomes part of that. And I think that that's really where the first person universe comes into play here. Is not mechanically necessarily are you looking at it from the point of view of the main character, but you are that main character. That character is who you are, because it takes so much of your, let's face it, it's going to take a lot of your time. It's going to take a lot of your energy. There's going to be a lot of you in this game, and so therefore that's what first person universe means.
God's sakes. Why don't you put this on pause and go check your mail to see if you got that check from Cloud Imperium Games. Okay, so I actually had to look up prior to this whole shenanigans the first use that I could find of first-person universe in conjunction with Star Citizen, since that's kind of the context of the question. It was Chris Roberts in an interview. They were trying to classify Star Citizen, and Chris Roberts said, it's something altogether new and different. And this is Chris Roberts' quote. We started to call it a first-person universe because you can fly around in space, but you can also walk around on foot in full first-person fidelity, equivalent to any AAA title out there. You can shoot people, but you can also trade with people. There are all these different things that you do, so it's essentially a virtual reality we're building in this future sci-fi universe. And if I didn't tell you that quote was in regards to Star Citizen, you wouldn't know what game, particularly MMORPG, that was in. For crying out loud, you might say that was Star Wars, based on the description I gave. You can fly around in space. You can walk around on foot and shoot people. You can trade with people. You can do all these different things. And it's full AAA equivalent first-person view. To me, no, the phrase doesn't mean anything. It's just a company trying not to use somebody else's phrase because it's trying desperately to be so new and exciting and vibrant and unlike anything anybody's ever seen before that we can't even dare touch the normal marketing terms that might put this into a category with something like Star Wars or World of Warcraft. Why on earth would we want to do that? It's silly.
Silly or not, I do think it is. I do think it is something different. I think that's the big thing. And where's my check? Oh, there's the mailman at the door right now.
I was for that because it's a big one. I don't want you to miss out on it.
Yeah, hold on, let me pause. No, I do think I do think that they are. Well, okay, my big debate is actually, are they going to be able to deliver the things they're going to deliver? Yeah. But assuming that they do, let's just for the purposes of this, let's assume that they are able to deliver everything that they say they can deliver. I think it is above and beyond what an MMO offers on average, and it's definitely more than. I'm trying to think if there's anything that really offers anything like this, and the closest thing that I can come up with is a game that doesn't even exist anymore, and that's Star Wars Galaxies. I mean, it's the only one that's offered this level of content, this level of absorbing, immersing content that they say they're going to offer, and so therefore I think it does put it on its own level, and I think that within that structure, it kind of deserves its own term. You know, there we go. My check is, it's at my door. I know it is.
Hey, I'm not faulting you. You got a family to feed. Do what you got to do, sir.
Final thoughts on that there, Mike? Anything?
It's a fake made-up term because they don't want to be anything else that's out there, even though they might share 99% of their feature base with things that are already out there.
All right, well, that's it for the debate here. That goes to you. Is this a real term? Is first-person universe a real term? And I cannot wait to see the comments on this one. So, anyway, thanks a lot. I want to thank my guest, Mike Byrne from MMO Bomb. Thanks a lot. You can catch him on Twitter at MagicMan1, which is spelled there below, MAGICKMANN1. What's coming up on the MMO Bomb that we can look for at the end of this year?
Oh, everything. We're in the middle of running some giveaways, including a Paladin's beta key giveaway. We have the free-to-play cast every week, which is the podcast. Larry's been kind enough to guest host on that before as well. First looks, all kinds of videos, and our top 50 free-to-play MMOs of all time right now. So come check it out, Larry. Merry Christmas to you and yours, and Happy New Year. It's always a pleasure to partake of the massively fun.
It's a lot of fun and great having you. Thank you for coming on this final show. I appreciate that. And if you want to see more of my things, I am on Twitter at Shadow, SHADDOE. I also write the Hyperspace Beacon and Tamriel Infinium here on Massively OP. Of course, always follow Massively OP on Twitter at Massively OP, and then go to our website, massivelyop.com. We're also on Massively Overpowered on Twitch, and we've got streams running there all the time. MJ does some amazing streams, and check those out. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks again to Mike, and thank you for tuning into the show, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.